do we now have an issue of the adult loneliness? And this is something that some people call the silent epidemic. Because even as you look around you, it seems that people are getting more and more isolated, especially as topics about mental health and a bigger issue of not having people to talk to. So when we talk about how mental health seems to be this like serious problem nowadays, I'm not really sure it's much more than it has been in the past, but perhaps our social circles are such that people feel a lot more isolated and a lot more alone. There's no one to sort of reach out to. So studies have shown that it's a lot more difficult for adults to make new friends nowadays. And so, of course, I want to take a deep dive into why that might be. So although we can say that maybe people are just not like saying hi to each other, they're not smiling at each other, but I don't think it's as simple as that. I think it goes even further to, you see, on the theory that we lose friends when either you yourself have moved to a different stage of life. And sometimes it's hard to fit people from the past into your new life. But you see, the converse is also true. And it could mean that your friends have moved on. Maybe they just don't want to talk about old school memories and they're making new memories right now. They're sort of pursuing new things. And so what this means is that sometimes it's an uncomfortable truth that you could potentially lose friends because other people moved on. And sometimes you get into a space where you're kind of stagnant. So it's not really your social circle that's stagnant, but perhaps we ourselves are stagnant, that we haven't been growing, we haven't been developing ourselves in any specific area of life. Now, another challenge that I want to sort of point out is that quite a lot of people have what I see as passive friend circles. And these are what I nickname institutional friends. So if everybody that you know in your circle are part of, say, your family, so there are people that essentially are your family members, or there are people that you met at school, or there are people that you met at work, or if you are active in a religious group, for example, if you go to church every Sunday, and there's that group of people who are always there. Now, the problem with institutional friends is that these are passive friends. So by virtue of you living your life, they're just kind of there. You know, it's like they're part of the furniture. They're just something that you see on your way as you're living your life. So the good news is that these are natural friends, but they're also passive in the sense that you're not actively choosing these people. They're kind of there because, you know, you go to work and they're just there. But what I think is missing from a lot of people is this idea of an active friend group. So these are people that you could meet because you've decided that you want to make golf a big part of your life. So you decide to join a golf club, and then you decide to be more active in competitions, or you might join a class and you might want to go have a drink with people after class. You might get involved in community theatre, or you might decide that you'd like to volunteer at an old folks' home, for example. And now those friends are different in the sense that they're not institutional. And by no means were these people imposed on you. You met them because you actively decided to get involved in something. And you know, if you decide to play golf, for example, you're united by a common love for the sport. Or it's just people who decide that I want to do something a bit more interesting with myself on Saturday. I want to pick up a sport, and maybe I just don't want to run. I'm a bit lazy and I just want to swing clubs around. So what you have here is that if we think of friends in the 11th house as people who reflect back our values and our beliefs to us, then having active friends becomes ultra important. And another challenge that I often hear from people is that we are so busy nowadays. Between work and your family obligations and various other responsibilities that you have, who has time to go and make friends? And in fact, I want to push back on that a little bit. And to a large extent, the difference here is in digitalization. And let me give you a few examples. And you know how we all say that, we don't really have time to meet up with friends, but have a look at how much time you spend streaming on your mobile phone or on your computer, watching YouTube or Netflix. It adds up those hours, right? But if you think about it, before the digitalization that we have now, people used to go out for movies. So rather than watching streaming by yourself, which is a solo activity, very few people watch movies on their own. Like if you go to the movie theater, you at least have one or maybe even a whole group of friends going with you. So that's an interaction opportunity that you don't get when you're Netflixing at home. Now you also have gaming, where people tend to do computer gaming nowadays. And yes, I know there are MMORPGs, there are like 50 million people playing the game, but you know, you're not really interacting with them. You're just sort of sitting there with your mouse and your keyboard, and it's just you, right? As opposed to in the past, before this kind of digital video games, even when people used to play console games, you kind of had to ask a friend over to have and pass them a controller, and there was some interaction there. Or even as people get together for things like board games, you're not going to play by yourself. You're going to have 4 or 5 people there rolling their dice or moving their pieces around. And again, that's an opportunity for interaction. And I think also in education, we see that a lot more after COVID. This idea of self-studying. And even as somebody who runs a school by myself, you see a lot of these educational institutions sort of promoting video courses. And the problem with that is you're sitting at your computer by yourself consuming videos, as opposed to people getting into discussion groups or having more interactive Q&A. Now, even if this is done online, but at least there is human interaction between people, which is sorely lacking nowadays. We also have cases of people ordering in. So as it becomes easier to just go to your phone and sort of click around and see what pizza or what Chinese takeout you want to order for the day. But you see, the problem with ordering in is that you potentially would be just sort of sitting at home, eating by yourself, as opposed to dining out where, again, very few people dine out on their own. They usually have a friend or a group of friends. So we keep missing out on all these interaction opportunities. Even something as simple as getting answers to your question. Nowadays, most people just pick up their phone and Google the answer. But in the past, before Google was so awesome, you would have to go find somebody who was interested in the same topic, who knew more about it than you did, and you ask questions. So that would be an opportunity to interact and to discuss your ideas, exchange of perspectives, and all of that is missing when you only ask Google for all your answers. So I think that's why we have to really think about our lifestyle. And if we are not actively engaging with this, we kind of forget that the way we live our lives makes it almost impossible for us to maintain an active and engaging sort of social circle where you even have your values reflected back at you. And obviously, everybody is feeling really lonely. So one other thing that I hear often in my classes and in my consultations is that even as lonely people know that they need to sort of reach out and talk to people, but there's an aversion to hanging out with other people because they say this kind of meetups seem to be so transactional. So if I ask them, what do you mean? And they say well, if I go out with people, it seems to be like this networking thing. Like everyone is looking for money-making opportunities, or I only talk to you if you can help me in my business. And they also say sometimes people want to meet up with you, but they're actually trying to sell you something. They're trying to sell you some crypto coin, or they're trying to recruit you into an MLM, or they work for an insurance or property thing, and they're just trying to get people in. So the idea is that you protect yourself by not going out to meet these people who just want, they just want stuff from you, right? And in fact, I want to take an opposite view here in the sense that we look at all these meetups as being very transactional now. Because since most of us can entertain yourself solo, then the idea of having to go out to meet somebody is like a cost, because it costs you transportation, it costs you time and effort to actually go out and meet somebody. So once we are very hypersensitive to the cost of meeting up with people, then we start to ask the proverbial question, which is, what's in it for me? So it almost seems like people only make an effort to meet up if I have something to gain from you. Am I going to make some money or get a business opportunity out of you? And so if we all start thinking that way, and of course, that aversion to making friends is going to be a really big problem if we don't actively think about this deeply. So then the next question is, so what can we all do about it? Okay, so I'm not a super expert on this topic, but I do have some suggestions based on this deep dive that we're looking at. So one would be, if there is something you're into. So if you're into mountain climbing, if you're like a hiker, if you care about Chinese Teochew Wayang, for example, there is a group out there that's into the exact same thing as you are. So that's when digitalization is a bit useful, because if you are looking for these groups, you will find them. There are people who are into all the weird shit that you're into, right? So all you have to do is send them an email, send them a message, hi, can I join in? Because what do you have to lose, right? The worst case scenario, somebody doesn't reply to you. Or you might show up, say hi, decide you don't like them, you don't have to show up again, right? So that's one way to get to know people. And chances are, if you like the same thing, you're going to find like-minded people. The 11th house is about finding your tribe and people who align themselves with what you care about. Now, another thing that we can do is that if you are already part of a group, so if you are part of a volunteer group that does beach cleanup, for example, what you want to do is to keep your doors wide open. So if you have an Instagram account, if there is a mailing list, the idea is to show people and let them know how they can come and participate. Because that's also a chance for you to expand your social circle to people who care about the same things as you do. And one other thing that perhaps we don't do enough is to lobby our leaders. So it doesn't really matter what country you're from or what the system is like, but there is someone you can speak to lobby for keeping open spaces, like available spaces for people to play sports, for people to put up a community theatre performance. You don't have to be a professional. If you want to put up a Shakespeare play, go ahead, make your own costumes or get together. So first of all, we need to have the spaces to do these things. Don't let them close down. Don't let them say that, well, let's build more shops and money-making spaces. People need places to just be themselves. And the other thing that we can do is having the spaces is not enough. So somebody has to organize these activities. So either you can step up as a volunteer, get a 2 or 3 people, small scale, and let it grow naturally from there. You can also potentially do this professionally. If you really enjoy something like that, don't be surprised. People are going to be happy to pay you to organize and put something together so that other people can participate. It's a viable career option as well. So I guess to wrap up on this topic, it's that in my studies in astrology for all these years, the 11th house is one of 12 houses, one of 12 areas of life. But in my opinion, it's one of the areas of life that get almost no attention at all. We spend all this time talking about money and career and love relationships, but friendships actually play this sort of low-key important role in people's lives. And you really only notice it when you suddenly have no more friends. So that's something that we really want to pay attention to, because the loneliness epidemic is something that affects people. And if we don't talk about it, it gets to a point where people don't really know what to do about it after. And this also means that as friendships become harder and harder to maintain, then you find people get very sentimental. And it seems that 2 or 3 friends that you have become so precious. And sometimes it means that people hang on to relationships that have outlived their usefulness, their utility. And it means that people find themselves having to squeeze a square peg in a round hole just to make a friendship continue, especially for those that probably really shouldn't. And that scarcity mindset actually comes from the fear that we aren't going to get new ones. It's almost as if people have forgotten how to make friends. And also, even scarier is that outside of work and outside of family, people don't seem to have a cause or hobbies that you engage in, it's completely voluntary, that you don't have to do. And that part of life is slowly disappearing from lots of people's lives. So it's really, really good that we sort of pay attention to this and really actively deal with that. And whatever crazy shit you're into, don't worry, some people in the world are into the exact same crazy shit. So with a minimal effort, you will find your tribe. And so my last message here is to people who are into, of course, something that I care a lot about, which is astrology. So it's one of those things that my students are sometimes embarrassed to tell their friends that they're into astro because it's woo-woo and it's mystical. But I hope you like our style of approaching astrology in a very practical way, in ways that it's easy for people to learn it properly and to apply it and to use it in a very applicable way in life. So if you're looking for a group of people who can do that with you, then I invite you to actually join us in our classes. So where we give students a very strong foundation in astrology, and you also find like-minded people who are actively using astrology to help their communities, help people get to know themselves, and to build a much more purposeful life. So links are in our description. You can find out how to get involved in our activities. So I'll catch you guys in the next video.